Up pickup truck and told them I had invested my entire life savings into a barren piece of farmland. My father didn't even hesitate. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You always were the dumb one. Don't come crying to us when you're bankrupt." My golden child sister stood behind them, smiling maliciously as they legally disowned me that very afternoon, erasing me from the family lineage entirely. For 5 long years, they mocked my old clothes, my calloused hands, and my broken bank account. They thought I was drowning in dirt, but what they didn't know was what sat directly beneath it. 3 days ago, I quietly signed a contract selling that exact same worthless farm to a massive tech conglomerate for $39 million. I told absolutely no one. But what happened next made me incredibly grateful. I kept it a secret. I'm glad to have you here, watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Maya, and I am 28 years old. If you grew up in my household, you would know that my name was practically synonymous with failure. In our family, success was measured in high-rise offices, tailored suits, and corporate bonuses. My older sister, Chloe, was the undisputed golden child. She became a high-earning corporate executive before she even turned 25, stepping effortlessly into the mold our parents had meticulously designed for us. I, on the other hand, was always labeled the dumb one. I hated the suffocating city, the artificial networking, and the relentless pressure to climb a corporate ladder that led nowhere. I wanted to build something real with my hands. When my late grandmother passed away, she left me a small inheritance. It wasn't a massive fortune, but to me, it was a lifeline. I pooled it together with every single penny of my personal savings to do something my parents considered completely insane. I bought a barren, neglected 200-acre plot of land on the absolute edge of town. To my father, it was a useless swamp of dirt and rocks that had been abandoned for years. They couldn't understand why anyone would trade a stable career for a crumbling farmhouse and a field of weeds. The day the property deed was finalized, the tension in our household reached its absolute breaking point. My parents looked at me not just with disappointment, but with genuine disgust, convinced I had officially ruined my life. The following evening, I was summoned to the living room for what felt less like a family meeting and more like a corporate tribunal. My father sat rigidly in his favorite armchair, flanked by my mother, who couldn't even bring herself to look at me. Chloe lounged on the sofa, her arms crossed, watching me with a smug, self-satisfied smirk. Without a word of greeting, my father slid a thick stack of legal paperwork across the mahogany coffee table. He told me that since I had proven myself completely incapable of making rational decisions, they were cutting ties. They refused to watch me bankrupt myself and expected me to sign a legal waiver relinquishing any future claim to the family estate. Chloe chimed in, her voice dripping with artificial pity as she told me that a low-class farmer didn't belong in a family of professionals anyway. She openly mocked my ambition, calling me a financial anchor that would only drag them down. My mother finally spoke, whispering that they had to protect Chloe's future from my inevitable failure. The cruelty of it pierced deep, but I refused to let them see me cry. I picked up the pen and signed everything with a steady hand, forfeiting my inheritance without a single argument. I went upstairs, packed my entire life into a few cardboard boxes, and carried them out to my cheap, sputtering truck. As I drove down the driveway, leaving my childhood home behind forever, I looked in the rearview mirror. My parents and sister were already closing the front door, completely shutting me out of their lives. I was entirely on my own, cut off without a dime, driving toward a broken-down farm with nothing but determination left in my tank. The next 5 years were a grueling masterclass in survival. The farm wasn't just neglected, it was actively punishing. I couldn't afford to fix the crumbling farmhouse, so I moved into a tiny, unheated trailer parked on the edge of the property. During the freezing winter months, I slept under 4 layers of blankets, waking up to my own frozen breath inside the cabin. My wardrobe dwindled down to a few heavily patched flannels and sturdy work boots that were constantly caked in mud. I worked from sunrise to long after sunset, clearing rocks by hand, tilling the stubborn soil, and trying to coax life out of a landscape everyone had abandoned. Every single dollar I made from selling small batches of vegetables at the local market went straight back into buying seeds and basic tools. I was barely scraping by, eating cheap canned beans just to save a few pennies. Meanwhile, my family made sure I never forgot my place at the bottom. Though I had changed my phone number, news from their world still trickled down to me through mutual acquaintances. Chloe was soaring. She bought a penthouse apartment in the city, drove a brand new European sports car, and took lavish vacations to European beaches, posting every second of it online. Every holiday season, my parents would boast to our old family friends about Chloe's incredible corporate promotions, while explicitly bringing up my miserable situation as a cautionary tale. They told everyone that the dumb one was exactly where she belonged, broke, dirty, and drowning in the mud. Little did they know, the very dirt they mocked me for working in was about to become the most valuable thing they had ever seen. The turning point came during the hottest summer on record. A brutal, relentless drought settled over the valley, drying up the local creek and threatening to wipe out my entire harvest. Out of absolute desperation, I spent the very last of my emergency funds to hire a professional geological surveyor. My only goal was to drill a deep commercial well through the bedrock to tap into a hidden water reserve and save my wilting crops. The drilling crew arrived with heavy machinery, battling the stubborn, sun-baked earth for 3 agonizing days. But when the drill bit finally pierced through a deep, dense layer of black shale, they didn't hit water at all. Instead, the machinery pulled up unique, metallic gray mineral core samples that left the head surveyor completely breathless. He immediately halted the operation and sent the samples to a laboratory for urgent testing. A week later, the official lab results arrived, changing my life forever. My seemingly barren farm was sitting directly on top of one of the largest, highest-grade lithium deposits ever discovered in North America. In a world rapidly shifting toward green energy, lithium was the new gold, the essential, ultra-rare material needed to power millions of next-generation electric vehicle batteries. Within 48 hours, the news leaked to the tech sector. I woke up on a Tuesday morning to find a fleet of sleek black SUVs driving up my dusty, unpaved road. High-ranking corporate executives from a massive international technology conglomerate stepped onto my rickety wooden porch, completely bypassing my patched clothes and offering me a seat at a table that would alter the course of my life completely. The corporate executives didn't waste any time. Sitting around my unstable wooden kitchen table, they laid out detailed geological maps and a massive acquisition contract that made my head spin. Over the next 2 days, I engaged in intense, highly confidential negotiations, backed by an elite legal team I hired using a small retainer fee the tech firm provided. They wanted the land immediately to fast-track their battery production facility, and they were willing to pay a premium to bypass any bidding wars. When the final agreements were ready, I signed my name with a steady hand, selling the property for a staggering $39 million in pure cash, while strategically retaining a small percentage of future mining royalties. The moment the wire transfer cleared, I stared at my phone screen in absolute disbelief. The girl who had been eating canned beans in a freezing trailer was suddenly a multimillionaire. My financial worries were permanently erased, but instead of immediately running out to buy a mansion, designer jewelry, or a fleet of luxury sports cars, I chose to pause. I quietly deposited the massive sum across several secure wealth management accounts, kept my mouth shut, and told absolutely no one. I deliberately decided to keep driving my old, beat-up pickup truck and wore my same stained, patched work clothes for a few more days. I wanted to see how my family would treat me if they thought I was still at absolute rock bottom. I needed to know if 5 years of separation had softened their hearts, or if they were still the same cruel people who had discarded me. I didn't have to wait very long for my answer. Exactly 3 days after the multi-million-dollar contract was finalized, my phone buzzed with an unexpected text message from Chloe. Out of the blue, she was inviting me to a formal family holiday dinner at a luxury restaurant downtown. Intrigued by the sudden invitation, I decided to play along. I intentionally showed up late, wearing my faded, dirty work flannels and old jeans, parking my sputtering, beat-up pickup truck right between a row of pristine luxury vehicles. The moment I walked into the private dining room, I realized the entire evening was a calculated trap. Chloe wasn't reaching out of sisterly love. She had brought me there to serve as a prop for her own vanity. She was announcing her engagement to a wealthy real estate developer, and her hand sparkled with a massive diamond. As soon as I sat down, my parents didn't even bother to ask how I was doing. Instead, my dirty clothes were embarrassing the family name in front of Chloe's new fiancé. Throughout the entire meal, Chloe and my mother took turns taking passive-aggressive jabs at my lifestyle, openly mocking my poverty and treating my presence like a charity case. When the dessert was served, Chloe stood up with a theatrical sigh and slid a fake, handwritten $100 check across the table toward me. She smiled condescendingly, telling the entire table that she wanted to make sure the dumb one could at least afford a decent bag of groceries this month. My parents nodded in approval, completely amused by my public humiliation. I didn't flinch. I calmly picked up the $100 check, tore it into tiny pieces, and let them drop into my water glass. Before Chloe could scream, I reached into my faded canvas jacket, pulled out my phone, and logged directly into my secure wealth management application, placing the screen face up right over her engagement announcement. The laughter died instantly. I watched the color rapidly drain from my father's face as his eyes locked onto the bottom line, a verified, cleared liquidity balance of exactly $39 million. Chloe's mouth fell open, her hands shaking as she realized that the dumb one they had discarded was now wealthier than everyone at the table combined. My mother tried to stammer out an apology, suddenly reaching across the table to grab my hand, but I pulled away. "You told me never to come crying to you when I went bankrupt," I said softly, standing up from my chair. "But you never told me what to do when I became a millionaire. Enjoy your dinner." I walked out into the crisp night air, leaving them trapped in a prison of their own regret. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you do if your own family disowned you, only to beg for your forgiveness once you struck it rich? Would you ever give them a single penny? Oh. And while you're here, I'm leaving 2 other unbelievable stories on the screen that will completely shock you. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and I'll